Welcome, everybody. My name is Bill Vining, and the CEO of HeartBridge, and we have a fantastic guest today that we're looking forward to visiting with, and his mother. And I want to introduce you to Bambi. Some of you guys know Bambi and have seen her in some of the other videos. But Bambi, I would like for you to introduce your son and tell us just a little bit about him.
Thank you, Bill. I'm very honored to introduce him. He is Coach Vander Bowden, and he is currently working in the state of Arkansas. He's been here and there. And Vander, do you want to tell a little bit about your career so far, where you are and what you've been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been a little bit here and there all over the place. My first actual job coaching. Well, I guess technically I kind of got started in it. I was a senior in high school, and I got asked by my head coach to come back and coach spring ball, help coach spring ball with him. And that's really kind of where I got the itch that, this is really what I want to do with my life. So I went back and did that in the spring, and he actually was connected to a coach at the University of Arkansas at the time, and got my foot in the door as a equipment manager. So I'm still around football, at the University of Arkansas at that level, learning and just a great opportunity. And then actually use that to spring it into a student assistant job. And so I did that for my time at the University of Arkansas, and actually had the privilege to get to work with Sam Pittman. He was the offensive line coach when I was there. And then he went to Georgia my senior year and had a chance to get to work for a coach by the name of Kurt Anderson, who's now at Northwestern. So learned from two really, really good coaches. Learned a lot, who I am as a coach, kind of my philosophy on coaching. A lot of that comes from Sam Pittman. And then I graduated college, and actually, ironically enough, my high school head coach helped me get my first official job, if you will, at Fort Smith Northside. I was the 7th grade head basketball, football, and track coach down there, and then the assistant basketball, football, track coach for 8th and 9th grade as well. So did that for a couple of years, and then some connections of some people that I met through the University of Arkansas. Bray Cook was he was actually at a D2 school, Southwest Baptist University in Missouri, and he was looking for a graduate assistant and called me and offered me the job. So moved up there and did that for a season, coach defensive line up there for a season. And then he actually took another job. He took a job back in Arkansas as a high school coach. And so I actually got promoted in that role of the offensive line coach and run game coordinator, and did that for a season. And then I actually got a phone call from somebody else I met being at Fort Smith, who had taken the head job at Alma, Arkansas. And he twisted my arm good enough to get me down there, go down there and do that. So did that for a year. And then the coaching cycle, got another phone call about the offensive line job at Springdale Harbor. And so actually, ironically enough, my head coach, my old high school head coach, is the offensive coordinator, and reached out to me. They were looking for an offensive line coach, and he was really, really wanted to get me up there and, continue that mentorship that he's really been throughout my life, my entire life, and a good opportunity for us to get up here. And so I lived up here as well. So a little less driving. So ended up taking that and a chance to get in the 7A West. And so this is my first season at Springdale Harbor, and that's where I'm at currently.
Well, a coach spends a lot of time building relationships and working with kids, and you certainly have made the rounds, and that's fantastic just to be able to get the different experiences with different coaches and different systems. What a great opportunity! Sounds like
Absolutely.
sounds like you've had. So congratulations and good luck in your career as a coach, and actually influencing young people, which is what it's all about. And I think there's with us coaches, sometimes we think that it's all about winning ball games when it's actually about building relationships. And so anyway, give us, just if you would, just a quick overview of your view of trauma and maybe how trauma has influenced your life.
That's a loaded question. I think, everybody's got their own personal things that happen to them. And, it kind of is what it is, for me, definitely having some childhood trauma. I think it produced who I am. I truly believe that. I don't know that I would sit in this chair because it is a lot of hours and it's a lot of work and it's underappreciated. Um, I don't know that I would be sitting in this chair today if it was not for my childhood and the trauma that I went through, um, I think trauma is something that can motivate you or it can be an excuse. I think that's a big thing for me, and I've seen it in kids where it's an excuse and they're the victim and they have no control. And I've seen it in kids where it motivates them, like it did me to go on and to be successful and to, try to chase your dreams and accomplish what you set out to do. I don't know what the differences between the two of taking that mentality of woe is me versus, I control my destiny. If I knew that, I probably would not be sitting here right now. I'd probably written a book or something by now. So I certainly don't know the key to that, but you see it every day in coaching. You deal with kids that have trauma. You deal with kids that, come from circumstances that you wouldn't even believe. I've got a kid who's a high schooler and has a kid, works a job, and plays football and goes to school. And I don't know how the kid does it. I don't even know that I could do it, and not per se that that's trauma, but the kid's got a lot going on in his life, and it just kind of makes you, it gives you hope a little bit in the aspect of there are people out there that do respond to adversity and hardships and trauma, in the right way. They don't use it as an excuse, but they use it as a motivation to go out and be successful and change it for their kids and change it for the future, which is, really what we're all trying to do here.
Vander, I would guess that kids like that have to have some kind of mentor or some kind of relationship with one that they can see that this is going to be okay for them and that they have hope. How have you, maybe in your experience as a coach and or teacher, been able to relate to or help others that you see that are going through trauma, maybe based on some of the experiences that you had?
I think I'm a little bit different in the aspect of how I go about coaching and teaching and as well. I think that kids need to see realness. So I'm not going to sit here and there's some days that I walk into practice and, I want my kids to know, not in a bad way, but like, guys, I've had a rough day and I'm not in the best mood. Just heads up, just because I think kids need to see that they need to see the real truth. They don't need to see somebody where they know. Kids are smarter. You can't lie to them. They know the truth. You can't hide it. They're smarter than we give them credit for. And so I think there's a lot of power in walking in, being around those young kids that are still developing who they are as a person, and them seeing, okay, well, this is an adult who just walked in and said he's had a bad day, this whatever's happened, and they're watching you and they're like, okay, well, how's he going? Or maybe you just got your butt chewed by the head coach and they're sitting over here like, well, how's he going to handle this? What's going to happen next? And I think there's a lot of power in that. I think leading by example is the most powerful, tool to teach people, is for them to see it. I think that's something that I really try to hang my hat on, is I'm not going to lie to my kids. Life's not perfect. I'm not perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. I had to apologize to them on a Monday morning about, there was something in in-game adjustment that I didn't see, and I should have seen it. It's my job to see it, and I should have corrected it, and I didn't. And I had to walk up there and tell them, guys, this is all me. From here on out, this is what we need to do to this look or whatever it may be. I think there's a lot of power to that. I think kids have to see. It's one thing, everybody talks, oh, you need to do this, when adversity, whatever it may be in life. But, I think what really separates the people who have a powerful impact on kids and the people that don't in this profession is the realism. I think they need to see you fail. How do you handle failure? I think a lot of things, especially in sports, in today's culture with kids, it's just different. I think there's two things that really comes down to. It's fear of failure. It's fear of judgment, especially in this social media world that we live in, where everything's publicized. There is nothing that's hidden. There is nothing that, the quarterback makes a bad throw when the game's on the line and it's over. It's going to be all over Twitter in the next 5 minutes. And everybody's going to know, not just Harbor, not just Bentonville, whatever it may be, the entire state of Arkansas is going to know because of social media. And so I think it puts this fear of failure and fear of judgment in kids, and it makes it where they, I think that's kind of where we get the apathy that we see a lot of today in kids, the kind of too cool for school, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's where a lot of that comes from is the fear of failure and the fear of judgment, because it's not necessarily that they don't want to be their best. It's not that they are going out there and maliciously not practicing hard. It's not that they're doing those things intentionally. It comes down to the fact that they're scared of failure, because if I give it all I have and I come up short and I pour it all out on the line and I still don't get the result that I want, well, then that's on me. Somebody's better than me. Somebody's stronger than me. Somebody's a better football team or whatever it may be than I am. And that's a tough pill for a kid to swallow,
Exactly.
especially when it's publicized all the time.
Okay, so Vander, is there any way that you can distinguish between a child that that is going through trauma and just a child that may be healthy without that trauma? Is there a way that you treat them different, or is there a way that you see that failure, even that fear of failure, exemplified with them?
I think when it comes to kids with trauma, I think that, if you halfway have a relationship with your kids, you're going to know. You can tell what kid's going home to, two-parent home that's stable, and, they're eating breakfast in the morning, they're getting a nice rest when they get there. You can definitely, there's telltale signs, and we've all been through the professional development and all this stuff of how you recognize it and all that stuff. But I think it really comes down to a relationship. And as far as, the treating the kids differently, absolutely not. Now, does that mean you don't have compassion? And does that mean you don't have empathy? No, those are necessary, obviously, because every situation is different. Everybody's got their own story, and you can't make your story their story. But as far as, the treatment, I think you got to treat kids equally. It's probably not the most best thing for a teacher to sit here and say, but my favorite thing in life is like a favorite way to compare it to kids. And what I try to tell them is, it's like Texas Hold'em. I've got 2 cards and there's 5 cards down on the table, and everybody can see those 5, but nobody knows what 2 I have. Nobody knows what 2 I have. And just because I'm dealt a bad hand, I'm born into poverty, I don't have parents, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have this. Just because you're born into that doesn't mean you can't not necessarily win this game of life, but you can't be successful. It's not about the cards you're dealt, because you don't control that. It's about how you respond and how you play. And so that's something, that I try to, the world doesn't, and going back to the fair thing, I think the second you make a kid a victim, you take all their power, right? The second you say, oh, well, hey, you don't have to run these sprints today because you're tired. Well, now I've just taken the ability for that kid to become his best away from him. I've just robbed him and made him a victim. He is no longer in control of his destiny. He's no longer in control of his life. I just stole it from him. And in reality, for what? To make me feel better about myself? Now I'm not saying that you don't have, you've got to understand the situation, and you've got to have some thought process behind it, and know what's best for the kid. But I think you got to hold them all to the same standard. And because I think if you don't, you're teaching that life's going to have pity on you because of this. No, if anything, life is going to kick you when you're down more. And that goes back into the thing of, how do you recognize kids with trauma, and how do you kind of get through to them? A big thing to me is, people meet me, and I ask my kids all the time. It's awesome. I ask them all the time. I'll say, where do you think I'm from? Well, Coach, you're from, suburbia America, had 2 parents at home, probably, whatever. all this other stuff. And it's awesome. I love it. Because then I'd let them go on their little spill, and I get to sit there and say, well, no, actually, let me tell you where I am from. And they're like, well, I never would have guessed that. I'm like, well,
That you had the weirdest mother, right?
No doubt. No doubt.
I know, I'm getting to know her better every day.
No doubt to that.
Bambi, do you have some questions that you have on the top of your head that you would like to ask to start with?
Well, because Vander and I talk a lot. He's my favorite motivational speaker. He can just
He's doing pretty good.
he can get me going. But I do know that he's very great at motivating kids. So, and I don't know that you motivate all kids in the same manner, but what are some of the tools that you use to motivate?
If you would ask that same question 30 years ago, I think you'd get a different answer. Just in coaching in general, I think that coaching has changed. I really believe that. I don't think, and I think it's because of culture. It's where we are at as a society. We are immediate gratification, visual. You think of, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's all visual. It's not words. It's not spoken. It's a picture that I can see. It is right in front of me. I can see it, and I think that's wired kids' brains differently than they have been in the past. It's no longer I can walk out there with a cup of coffee, and 5 minutes before practice starts, and I can get kids to go full speed by me standing here drinking my coffee. It's not good enough. Go again. Like, that's not going to do it. I think, again, it goes back to, you got to lead by example when it comes to motivation. I think my number one job as a coach is every day that I'm out there is to bring my best, period. And that's energy, that's preparation, that's, enthusiasm, that's technique, that's everything that goes into coaching. I think, if it's like this morning, we had practice at 6:45 a.m. Okay. Well, I brought my kids in at 6 a.m. to watch film. That's early. That's early. When you get done at 6 o'clock the night before, that's a quick turnaround. And so, I come in there and I think it's my job, no matter how tired I am, how exhausted I am, I've got to come in there. I got to be happy. It's contagious. And I got to have energy because it's contagious. And all my kids, they make fun of me like, Coach, man, how much pre-workout are you on? Like, it's 6 a.m. in the morning. You're crazy. Like, you're sweating and screaming and making jokes. And like, what are you doing? It's contagious, right? I can sit here and I can yell at kids all day. Oh, do that better, do that better, do that better. But while I stand here with my cup of coffee with a monotone voice, like, they're not seeing it. They're like, well, and it's just the way that society is, going back to that visual thing of, well, I'm watching you're what's in front of me, and you're standing there with a cup of coffee, half asleep, talking in a monotone voice. Why should I have energy? Why should I be positive? And a lot of kids don't know how to anymore. That's the honest truth. And I think that's the job of every coach is to motivate their kids to become their best. And I think you do that by leading by example. I just don't think you can sit there and say it anymore. And it's the same way in the classroom. You can't teach the way you used to teach. It's no longer solve for X because I told you to. It's, how does this apply to me? Like, why should I know this when I can Google it in 20 seconds? Why should I understand this? And so I think it's the same way in coaching. Like, well, why should I have energy? Well, it's contagious. Like, it's going to make you practice better. It's going to make you practice harder. And not only that, one person does it, 2 people start doing it, then 3 people start doing it, then 4 people start doing it. And it is truly, truly contagious. And so if you lead that charge every day, then the vast majority of your kids are going to follow suit every day. And I think they take on your personality to an extent. I really do. Just like a dog takes on its personality of its owner. I think kids take on the personality of their coach when it comes to that practice setting a lot of times, and game setting. I'm a hype, loud, jumping around, running, sprinting guy at practice. And on game day, I'm the most cool, calm. I don't raise my voice. I don't get upset. I don't, because I want my kids to follow that suit as well.
Don't get upset during the ball game.
I try not to. If I do, I try not to show it to them. I get aggravated sometimes.
A little different than me, I'll guarantee you. You know, when I was growing up, my coach, who was one of my great mentors, never built a relationship with any of his players.
Mhm.
Back in the day, and this was 50 years ago, but that long ago, we were told not to. Even when I started coaching, don't build a relationship with your kids because you don't want to get too close to them. I think that's changed today. And I think that's changed for the good, by the way, because you do have kids that really, really need that relationship. I think there are kids that don't have that relationship with their parents. That whereas when I was growing up, most everybody had two parents. Most did, and although there was divorce and there was some other, but most did. And so, what do you see as your role, I guess, in building relationships with your kids?
You know, it's funny. Don't get me wrong. I love football. I love the physics of it. I love the geometry behind it. I love the mentality of it. I mean, I love all that. But at the end of the day, that's not really what it's about, because that's not what the game. A leather ball did not save my life. You know, my coaches that were father figures to me saved my life. And so at the end of the day, you know, you got to kind of keep that in perspective. And that's something, you know, that I try to give respect. I didn't join this profession, you know, don't get me wrong. I want to win. But I think winning's a byproduct of the other things.
Okay.
You know, I think when winning is at the pinnacle of what we try to achieve, then we're not going to achieve it. I think when developing men of character that know how to work hard, that know how to put themselves or others above themselves, and how to make sacrifice, and how to be part of something bigger than them, how to work with somebody they might not necessarily like. You know, I think that's really the things that are taught throughout sports and football, especially. And that's really the purpose behind it. You know, when you lose sight of that, I think it's a downward slope, and I think it all snowballs on you really quick. And that's just, you know, you got to have the relationship. You do, whether we like it or not. A lot of those kids are watching you. And yeah, they may have two parents at home, but like, you know, I think of me, I'm a 28-year-old young man. Like, to me, I'm a different role model than their parents. You know, I'm not necessarily their father figure, because they could be at a great home. I've got kids that have great parents. I'm not necessarily the father figure. They look at me a little bit different. They look at me as, well, this is somebody that, you know, is a 28-year-old adult who, you know, like, whatever it may be. I wouldn't say they think I'm cool. That's not it. But, you know, they're watching you and they're like, okay, well, how does this guy conduct himself? Because I'm a little more relevant than their father is, or I'm a little more relevant than the 50-year-old coach is, who has 4 kids and all. So to them, we're a little bit closer. And so I think they watch, you know, I'm a role model in a different way. They always make fun of me because, you know, I love watching clinic tape, and I love talking to coaches, and I love doing all this. And I type out my notes and I'll send it to them, and they're like, Coach, do you not have a life? And, you know, kind of my thing is to teach them the work ethic. Like, yeah, I'm 28 years old and there's a lot of other things I could be doing, but this is my job. And you know, anything that I'm attached to I'm going to do the best I can at it, because my name's on it. You know, and so I think, you know, that's just something, whether you like it or not, you're a role model. It may not be a father figure, but whether you like it or not, they're watching you as an adult and somebody that I mean, obviously, for the most part, they're going to trust you. You tell them who to block, how to block them, when to block them, how to get it done, how to be better at it. Well, if they listen to me in that, then they're listening to me in a lot of other aspects than just football. How do I talk to other people? How do I conduct myself in my work? How do I go about life? You know, am I sitting here screaming at referees all the time? Or do I understand that they're people and they make mistakes? And yeah, it's aggravating, but that's not on me. I control me. So, You know, I think they watch you in every aspect of life, and it may not always be a father figure, but in some way, shape, or form, you play a role in their life and molding who they are.
We have something called forward thinking, which is basically um, for kids that have gone through trauma or that are actually experiencing trauma. One of the worst things is to continually look back on life and continually look at the situation that put them into that. And so you can look at that in your life. And I hear, from your voice and from what you're saying, you are moving forward and moving. How can you help kids that in your on your team, or that specifically that have or going through trauma, look at moving forward instead of continually looking in the past?
I mean, obviously, I think the underlying theme here through all of it is relationship. You got to know the kid. The kid's got to know you. He's got to trust you. And then two is like, being that example. I mean, I truly believe that, and my mother can attest to this. I'm an open book in a lot of ways. I love the fact that I get to share my story, because for whatever reason, and I don't know the reason, but for whatever reason, I survived what I went through, and I came out, somewhat normal, not completely.
That's not a
But
good thing. Normal is not good, by the way. So, but
you're right. You're right on that. There's no doubt. But I think being transparent and open and honest with the kids, I tell my kids my story a lot of times. Now, I don't force it down their throat, and you can't. I think back to my first year coaching, and when it really dawned on me while I was in, or like the magnitude of the power that this title I hold has, was a kid. I was the punishment coach my first year because I was a new guy. No one wants that job. So there was a kid, and both his parents were in prison, and he was failing out of school. And I mean, just type of kid that is worrisome. And he didn't care. Literally, the only reason he showed up was sports. That was it. He'd tell me that every day. Coach, the only reason I'm here is for sports. If you don't play me, like, I'm not coming to school. But anyways, one day I was punishing him, and he just loses it, and he goes off. You don't get it. You don't understand. My family's in prison. I'll go to prison too. I don't care. Like, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this because so-and-so is mad at me because I didn't read her poem in English class. And so he goes off on this tangent. And I was like, okay, well, tell me, what do you think I don't get? Like, why don't you tell me what you've been through that I don't get? He's like, well, Coach, you grew up in suburbia white America and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just sitting here and I'm smirking ear to ear like, this is awesome. You're walking right into it, and I love it. And so he gets done. I was like, okay, you finished? Yeah, Coach, I'm done. And I was like, okay, let me tell you where I'm really from. And I shared my story with him. I got the opportunity to share my story with him. And I mean, floored, jaw to the ground. I was like, Coach, I had no idea. And to this day, he'll call me, he'll text me. Throughout the school year, they called me the Whisperer. If he got in trouble and was in the principal's office, or the SRO had him, or whatever it may be, immediately I get radioed. Coach Bowden, can you come to the office? So-and-so's here, and he won't listen to anybody but you. So can you come talk to him? So I think a lot of it is just building that relationship and being willing to share. Like, we are all human. I fail. I've been through some stuff. And you got to be willing to share that. I'm not perfect. And when they see that, I think it opens up a level of trust, and it opens up that avenue to actually change a kid's life, other than, oh man, I love you, get a break. That's not real. That's not transparent. Like, okay, cool. I think that you have to build that true, deep relationship, and then you got to be willing to put yourself out there a little bit. That's not, for some people, that's a hard thing to share, but that's your job. That's why, you should have chose this profession, was to share that. And so I think that's a big one for me, is just being honest with kids and sharing with them. And that's really, that's how winning a state title is great. Winning games is great. It's fun, solves a lot of issues, but that's not going to change a kid's life. It's not. The hardships that kids go through, and the things that you teach them through football and who you are, and sports in general is what changes a kid's life. And it goes back to that relationship aspect.
Just to close out, and I think the closeout would be, I think is there an encouragement that you would give to teachers and or coaches that are working with kids with that have been through trauma, or just working with kids? Just let me say the last minute or two.
You know, I don't, and not that I am some great coach or some great teacher. That's not but you know, I do believe, number one, I think there's a lot of pride and ego in coaching. I think there's a lot of pride and ego in teaching. And that can't be who you are, who we are, because I think it's real easy. I mean, it's real easy. I think back to a kid smarting off in class, and it goes all over you. I mean, it turns me beet red, believe me. It turns me all types of angry, but I have a choice. I have a choice at that point to either berate the kid and embarrass him, or to ignore it, continue what I'm doing, whatever, you know, handle the situation, but not do it in a way that embarrasses the kid. You know, I can deal with that issue later. Because, and I think we're at the pride and ego thing, you know, I think we all have it. I think a lot of coaches suffer from it, especially, you know, if we didn't have pride and ego, I don't think we'd be in this business. I think there's a certain level that you have to have pride in your work and who you are and what you believe in. But, you know, I think you have a choice when it comes to dealing with kids in that moment. I don't think if you walked into Springdale Harbor and you asked any kid in my class, or you asked any of my football players, if you walked in as a complete stranger and you said, hey, who's your coach? I don't think one of those kids would tell you anything other than Coach Bowden, right? I think, you know, same thing. If you walked in my class and they said, hey, who's your teacher? Well, it's Coach Bowden. And so I think, you know, in that moment where a kid smarts off and you want to put them in their play, you know, you want to kind of fire back because he's kind of embarrassed you in front of these kids or whatever. I think you really got to sit down and look at yourself as a person. Am I really, number one, concerned about what 12, 13, 17-year-old kids think about me? Is that really what defines my happiness and who I am? And then two, everybody knows who's in charge. There's not a kid in that class that wouldn't say I'm their teacher. There's not a kid on that football team that wouldn't say I'm the coach. So me berating a kid and, you know, getting mad at a kid to prove a point of like, well, I'm the guy in charge here. You don't control this. I do. Like, I think that is something that, you know, I truly believe we do that out of ego. We do that out of pride. The kids know the truth. You're just doing that for yourself. You know, so that's something I think that kids, you know, obviously, or teachers and coaches, that's something we all struggle with. And I think it's a thing of where you got to lay your pride at the door and do what's best for the kid, and that's not always the best thing for you.
Vander, I appreciate your time, and thank you for being candid, and thank you for just being open and honest. And we want to congratulate you on your career already, but also on your career to come and looking forward. And so thank you very much. And if any way we can help you, we would love to. So
absolutely. Thank you.
All right.